We need to talk right now. Because while you were busy trying to rank up in Valorant or begging for GTA 6 crumbs, a bunch of corporate vampires in the UK decided it was time to put a bullet in the head of the only platform that actually functions in this godforsaken industry. I am talking, of course, about the absolute circus act happening in the UK Competition Appeal Tribunal, Valve Steam, the Holy Land. The one place where you buy a game, it works, and you don't get treated like a criminal for wanting to play it. Well, apparently, providing a service that isn't complete dog water is now illegal. I'm reading this headline and I think, oh, surely this is a joke. Surely the courts threw this out. Nope, this is real. A £656 million lawsuit. That's nearly $1 billion, folks. $1 billion because Steam is too good? Because they dominate the market. Let me explain something to the suits in London, in terms even a toddler could understand. Steam is a monopoly in the same way that oxygen is a monopoly on breathing. It's not a monopoly because they shot the competition, it's a monopoly because the competition decided to hold their breath and die. But no. According to Vicki Shotbolt, remember that name, because she is the villain of this anime arc. Valve is abusing its dominant position. I'm gonna read this article. Valve's attempt to have courts dismiss a legal action brought against it for allegations of overcharging and anti-competitive practices has failed, as reported by the BBC. A judge's ruling is allowing the case brought by lawyer Vicki Shotbolt to go ahead on behalf of 14 million Steam users in the UK. Failed. It failed to be dismissed. So let me get this straight. You have 14 million people. Did any of you ask for this? Did any of you wake up this morning, log into Steam, look at the summer sale, and scream, "Help, I'm being oppressed by these discounts"? No, you didn't. This is what we call representative litigation. It's a fancy legal term that translates to, we are going to use your name to sue a company you like, take a massive cut of the winnings for our law firm, and send you a check for £3.50 in 5 years. On behalf of 14 million users, who gave you the mandate, Vicky? Who is this we? There is no we. There is you chasing a bag and us trying to play Pal World in peace. Let me paint you a picture of what this actually looks like in practice. Somewhere in Manchester, there's a 17-year-old kid who just bought Terraria on sale for $3. He's playing with his mates, building pixel castles, having the time of his life. He has no idea that a law firm in London just conscripted him into a legal crusade against the very platform that just gave him 200 hours of entertainment for less than the price of a McDonald's meal. That's what opt-out litigation means. You're in the lawsuit unless you actively remove yourself. And how many teenagers do you think are regularly checking their legal status regarding digital distribution platforms? How many working parents are going to see the obscure notice buried in some legal journal and think, you know what, I better opt out of this thing I didn't know existed? It's predatory, and it's absolutely legal, which tells you everything you need to know about how screwed up the system is. First filed in 2024, Shotbolt's claim with its own fancy website is an attempt to prove that Valve's policies on Steam violate UK laws on anti-competitive prices and unfair trading conditions that prevent or hinder others from competing with them. The argument concerns Valve's demand that games sold on Steam not be made available at a permanently lower price on rival stores. This is the core of the argument. Platform parity obligations, or PPOs. Sounds smart, right? Sounds like some serious antitrust shit. It's garbage. They are mad because Valve says, hey, if you sell your game on our store, where we provide the servers, the forums, the workshop, the reviews, and the audience, you can't go sell it for half price on another store just to undercut us while using our platform for visibility. That's not anti-competitive. That's called not being a doormat. Let me break down what's actually happening here, because the legal filing deliberately obscures this with jargon. Developers are completely free to sell their games wherever they want. They can sell on Epic, they can sell on GOG, they can sell on their own website, they can sell physical copies in a van outside of Tesco if they want. What Valve's policy actually says is this: if you're using our platform, our bandwidth, our servers, our community features, our marketing visibility, our customer service infrastructure, you can't permanently list the game cheaper somewhere else while still benefiting from everything Steam provides. Temporary sales? Fine. Bundles on other platforms? Fine. Different pricing in different regions? Fine. What you can't do is use Steam as your primary storefront, get all the benefits of being discovered by Steam's massive audience, and then tell those customers, actually go buy it over here for 30% less. If I run a shop and I put your product on the shelf, handle the transaction, manage the returns, provide the shopping environment, and drive foot traffic to your product, you think I'm going to let you sell it out of the back of your van across the street for 50% off. You're cooked. You are absolutely cooked if you think that's a legal argument. This isn't some novel invention by Valve either. This is standard retail practice that's existed for literally centuries. When you get your product into Walmart, you sign agreements about pricing. When you sell through Amazon, there are parity clauses. This is how commerce works. The only difference is that because it's digital and because gamers are involved, suddenly it's being treated like some unprecedented monopolistic conspiracy. And that once you buy a game on Steam, the only way you can buy further content for that game, be it DLC, expansion packs, or cosmetics, is also via Steam. This shotbolt claims allows Valve to hold a dominant position in the PC gaming market, and that it may have used this position in ways that violate UK competition law. Oh my god. I lost brain cells reading that. You mean to tell me if I buy a game on Steam, I have to buy the DLC on Steam? Yes, because that's how files work, you absolute muppets. This is the part where I genuinely start to question whether anyone involved in this lawsuit has ever actually used a computer. This isn't a legal strategy, this is a fundamental misunderstanding of how digital ecosystems function. When you buy a game on Steam, you're not just buying a product, you're buying a license that's authenticated through Steam's DRM system. The game files are integrated with Steam's API. Your save files are stored in Steam's cloud. Your achievements are tracked through Steam's achievement system. Your multiplayer connectivity runs through Steam's networking infrastructure. When you buy DLC, that DLC has to authenticate with your base game license. It has to verify that you own the core game. It has to integrate with the existing file structure. It has to sync with your save data. Imagine buying a PlayStation game and then crying because you can't plug an Xbox cartridge into the disk drive to play the DLC. Your Honor, Sony is forcing me to use their ecosystem. It's a technical necessity. The DLC has to authenticate with the base game license. Do these lawyers even play video games? Do they know what a file directory is? Or do they just see a big pile of money and start drooling like Pavlov's dogs? And here's the thing that really gets me. If this is truly such an anti-competitive practice, why isn't every single platform being sued? PlayStation works the exact same way. Xbox works the exact same way. The Nintendo Switch works the exact same way. The Epic Game Store, Tim Sweeney's precious baby that supposedly represents the competitive alternative, works the exact same way. If you buy Fortnite skins, you buy them through Epic. If you buy Assassin's Creed DLC on Ubisoft's platform, you buy it through Ubisoft. This is universal, but somehow only Valve is in the dock for this. I wonder why. Could it be because Valve is private, successful, and sitting on a pile of cash that lawyers want a piece of? Nah, couldn't be. That would be too cynical. Class action lawsuits are not a commonplace event in the UK, where the mass litigation is known as a collective action claim and works on an opt-out basis. Basically, Shotbolt and her law firm are going to sue Valve on behalf of British Steam users unless they specifically say they don't want in. That's how it's able to claim to be suing on behalf of 14 million people. Opt out? That is the dirtiest phrase in the legal dictionary. They are counting on your apathy. They are counting on the fact that 99% of you are too busy living your lives to file a form saying, please don't include me in your crusade. They are drafting you into their war without your consent. They are using your consumer data as ammunition to attack the one company that hasn't completely sold out to the shareholder. In the United States, class action lawsuits typically work on an opt-in basis. You have to actively join the lawsuit, you have to say, yes, I am part of this claim, I believe I was harmed, and I want to participate. That system has its own problems, but at least it requires some level of consent. You're actively choosing to be part of the litigation. The UK's opt-out system flips this entirely. You are automatically included unless you actively remove yourself. And the process for removing yourself, it's deliberately obscure. You have to find the notification, which might be buried in legal notices you never read. You have to fill out forms. You have to submit documentation. You have to do all of this within a specific time frame that you probably don't know about. The result, the vast majority of people never opt out. Not because they support the lawsuit, not because they feel harmed, but because they simply don't know what's happening. This allows law firms to claim they represent millions of people, when the reality is that maybe 0.1% of those people are even aware the lawsuit exists, and an even smaller fraction actually support it. It's legal fiction masquerading as consumer protection. Valve, obviously, objects to the claims and filed to have the case thrown out. A ruling filed January 26 by the Competition Appeal Tribunal says that Valve opposed on the basis that the PCR, the shorthand for Shotbolt's group, had not put forward an adequate methodology before venturing all manner of peculiarly specific fiddly details about determining the effect of the alleged PPOs, and that the class definition was inadequate, and so on. Valve's lawyers argued, you have no way to prove this hurts anyone. This is the methodology argument. In court, you can't just say big number bad. You have to show the math. You have to prove that if Steam didn't exist, games would be cheaper. But guess what? They can't prove that. Because every other store, Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, charges the exact same 30% commission. So if Steam disappears tomorrow, do prices drop? No, they stay exactly the same, except now the launcher sucks and your friends list is broken. This is where the lawsuit completely falls apart under scrutiny, and it's why Valve fought so hard to get it dismissed on methodology grounds. The entire claim rests on the assumption that Steam's policies cause prices to be higher than they would otherwise be in a competitive market. But where is this magical competitive market? Show me the evidence. The 30% commission that Steam charges? Industry standard. Apple charges it. Google charges it. Console manufacturers charge it. This isn't some unique Valve invention. It's the baseline rate that's existed for decades across all digital distribution. The platform parity obligations. Also, industry standard. Try listing an iOS app in the App Store and then selling it cheaper on your website while using Apple's platform for discovery. See how fast you get booted. The requirement that DLC be sold through the same platform as the base game. Technical necessity, as we've already established. So where's the harm? Where's the overcharge? The lawsuit claims £656 million in damages, which means they're claiming that UK consumers were overcharged by that amount. But overcharged compared to what? Compared to a hypothetical fantasy world where digital distribution is free and developers work for exposure, Valve's legal team ripped this apart. They pointed out that the plaintiffs had no coherent methodology for calculating damages. Shotbolt's team promised to double-check their punctuation, and that seemed to be enough to have Valve's concerns overturned. The tribunal rejected Valve's challenge in this respect. Double-check their punctuation. That's what this tribunal thinks of a billion-dollar ecosystem. It's just paperwork. They revised the class definition to tie the class tightly to the party who has suffered the loss. Translation, they did just enough semantic gymnastics to convince a judge who probably still uses a BlackBerry that this lawsuit is legit. And this is the terrifying part. The tribunal didn't reject Valve's arguments because they were wrong. They rejected them because the plaintiffs said, oops, our bad, we'll fix the paperwork. That's it. That's the standard. Valve presents a comprehensive legal argument about why the methodology is flawed, why the class definition is overbroad, why the entire premise of the lawsuit is economically nonsensical, and the tribunal's response is essentially, yeah, but they said they'll revise it, so we're good. This is how bad law gets made. This is how terrible precedents get set. Not because the arguments are sound, not because the evidence is compelling, but because a judge doesn't want to be seen as dismissing a consumer protection lawsuit, even when that lawsuit is obvious nonsense. The class definition issue is particularly egregious. Valve correctly pointed out that the original class definition included minors who legally cannot enter into contracts and therefore cannot be bound by Steam's terms of service. This is basic contract law. If you're under 18, you can't form a binding contract in most jurisdictions. So how can you be part of a class action claiming you were harmed by contract terms you weren't legally bound by? It's circular logic, it's legal gibberish. But the tribunal said, hey, just redefine the class. So they did. Now the class is defined as people who bought games on Steam and were harmed by anti-competitive practices. All of that basically amounts to, yup, this action can go ahead, which will mightily annoy Valve, given 99.9% of Steam users will never even know this action is taking place. That sounds impressively farcical. Should the PCR win, it'll mean everyone in the UK is entitled to some money back, which will likely be fairly meaningless amounts to all involved except for Valve. The claim is looking for £656 million, fairly meaningless amounts to all involved, except for Valve. There it is. The truth. You get $5. The law firm gets $50 million. And Valve, the only private company left that doesn't answer to blood-sucking Wall Street investors, takes a massive hit that forces them to change their business model. Let's do the math, because this is where the scam becomes undeniable. 656 million pounds divided by 14 million users equals approximately £47 per person. That sounds pretty good, right? 47 quid back in your pocket, except that's not how class action settlements work. Ever. First, the law firm takes their cut. In class actions, contingency fees typically range from 25%. Let's be generous and say 30%. That's £197 million straight to Milberg London LLP. Then there are administrative costs. Someone has to process all those claims, verify eligibility, send out notices, handle disputes. That's another 10-15% easily. Let's say £80 million. Now we're down to about £359 million for the actual class members. Divided by 14 million people, that's £27 per person. But wait, not everyone will file a claim. Class action settlements typically see claim rates of 5 to 10%. Most people don't even know they're eligible, and those who do often don't bother with the paperwork for small amounts. Let's say 10% file claims. That's 1.4 million people. 379 million divided by 1.4 million equals 270 pounds per person for those who actually claim. That sounds better, except those claims have to be verified. Some will be rejected, some will be disputed. By the time everything shakes out, successful claimants might see 150 town. And what about the other 12.6 million people who are part of the class but never filed claims? Their share goes back to, well, that's the fun part. It usually goes to Cypress Awards, which means charitable donations chosen by the lawyers, or it reduces the overall settlement, or it just vanishes into legal fees. The average Steam user in this lawsuit will see exactly £0 and 0 pence. A small fraction will see a couple £100. And the law firm will walk away with 9 figures. And the cost? The cost is that Valve has to tighten its belt. Maybe they stop working on Linux support. Maybe they stop the Steam Deck too. Maybe they start allowing intrusive ads in the library to make up the lost revenue. This lawsuit is an attack on the last bastion of quality in the PC market. Let's zoom out, because this isn't just about the UK. This is about a fundamental misunderstanding of why Steam is king. They call it a monopoly. Is it reasonable to say Steam dominates PC gaming? Yes. They have 80–90% of the market. That is a fact. But why? Is it because Gabe Newell hired a hit squad to take out the competition? Is it because they bought every studio and shut them down? No, it's because everyone else sucks balls. Look at the competition. Ubisoft Connect. It logs you out if you sneeze too hard. I have personally spent more time trying to get Ubisoft's launcher to work than I have actually playing Ubisoft games. The thing forgets your password even when you tell it to remember. It requires updates every single time you launch it. It has its own in-game overlay that conflicts with Steam's overlay, which conflicts with Discord's overlay, creating a beautiful cascade of crashed games and lost save files. The EA app, it deletes your save files for fun. I'm not even joking. There are documented cases of EA's launcher just deciding that your 50-hour Mass Effect save doesn't exist anymore. Whoops, gone. And their customer service response is essentially, have you tried turning it off and on again? Thanks, EA. Very helpful. And then there is Epic Games, Tim Sweeney, the principal skinner of the gaming industry. The man who has spent hundreds of millions of dollars on free games, exclusive deals, and lawsuits trying to buy your love. And what happened? Nobody cares. Look at the competition. People claim the free games on Epic and then go buy them on Steam just so they don't have to use the Epic launcher. That is how bad your product is, Tim. Your launcher takes 5 minutes to load on a 40. It looks like a mobile app designed by a drunk intern. It didn't have a shopping cart for years. Let me repeat that for emphasis. Epic Games Store, a digital storefront, didn't have a shopping cart. The most basic feature of e-commerce since approximately you had to buy games one at a time, go through checkout each time, receive separate confirmation emails for each purchase. It was like shopping on Amazon but having to create a new account for every single item. When people pointed this out, Epic's response was basically, we're focused on features that matter. Apparently, basic functionality doesn't matter. Apparently, not making your customers want to throw their keyboards through their monitors doesn't matter. Steam isn't a monopoly because of predatory practices. It's a monopoly because it offers user reviews that are actually funny and helpful, unlike the sanitized corporate speak you get on console stores. Community forums where you can actually get tech support from other players instead of waiting 3 weeks for a support ticket response. The workshop, which has extended the lifespan of games like Skyrim by literally a decade through community mods. Linux support, Steam Deck, baby. Valve is the only company actually pushing Linux gaming forward. Refunds that actually work. 2 hours of playtime, no questions asked. Compare that to console stores where you're lucky if they let you refund a pre-order. Family sharing, so your siblings or friends can play your games without you having to give them your account password. Remote Play Together, which let people play local co-op games online during the pandemic. Big picture mode for couch gaming. Trading cards and achievements that actually integrate with the platform instead of being an afterthought. Sales. Actual regular sales with deep discounts, not the 10% off a 3-year-old game nonsense you see on other platforms. And that's just scratching the surface. We haven't even talked about Steam Input, which lets you use virtually any controller with any game. We haven't talked about the built-in FPS counter and performance overlay. We haven't talked about the screenshot manager. We haven't talked about the broadcast feature. We haven't talked about the curator system that helps you discover games. Every single one of these features was built because Valve actually gives a damn about the user experience. Meanwhile, Epic's big innovation was checks notes, giving away free games and hoping you wouldn't notice that their platform is held together with duct tape and prayers. And the lawsuit claims Steam's 30% cut is excessive. Oh, 30% is unheard of. It is the industry standard. Sony takes 30%, Microsoft takes 30%, Nintendo takes 30%. Apple takes 30%. Google takes 30%. Why isn't Vicki suing Sony? Why isn't she suing Nintendo? I'll tell you why. Because it's fashionable to hate the platform. Because these lawyers see a private company sitting on a dragon's hoard of cash and they want a piece of it. Because Valve doesn't have an army of PR people and lobbyists running interference. Because Valve is private, which means they can't hide behind shareholders and board members. Sony is a massive publicly traded corporation with lawyers in every jurisdiction. Nintendo is a Japanese company with a legal department that makes the Yakuza look friendly. Apple has more money than some countries and lawyers to match. Valve is a private company run by a bunch of nerds in Seattle who just want to make games and game distribution better. They're an easy target. They can't threaten to pull operations out of the UK because they don't really have operations in the UK. They're a digital platform. They can't lobby Parliament because they don't have a lobbying arm. They can't flood the media with sympathetic coverage because they barely do PR at all. So they get sued, not because they're the worst offender, not because they're the most harmful to consumers, but because they're vulnerable. This argument that developers are forced to pay 30%, nobody is forcing you to be on Steam. You can sell on itch.io for whatever cut you want. You can sell on GOG for 30%. You can sell on Epic for their 12% cut, but nobody buys games there. And whose fault is that? Is it Valve's fault that when you search for good PC game stores, nobody says Epic Game Store? No, it's those platforms' fault for not building something people actually want to use. If you want the audience, you pay the rent. That's business. That's capitalism. I thought you guys loved capitalism, or do you only love it when it's not working for the gamers? Here's the thing about that 30% cut. It's the equilibrium point where platform operators can maintain infrastructure, develop new features, provide support, and still make a profit, while developers can price their games competitively and still make money. When Epic came in with their 12% cut, everyone acted like this was revolutionary. Look, Epic is only taking 12%. Steam is greedy. Except Epic can only sustain that 12% because they're subsidizing it with Fortnite money. The Epic Game Store has never been profitable. It loses money every year. Epic's own court filings in their lawsuit against Apple revealed that they don't expect the store to be profitable until 2027 at the earliest. That's not a sustainable business model. That's not competition. That's a billionaire using money from one business to try to destroy another business in a completely different market. It's predatory pricing, but because it's against big bad Steam, everyone acts like it's noble. If Epic ever actually succeeds in taking significant market share from Steam, what do you think happens? Do you think they maintain that 12% forever? No. They raise it to 25%, then 28%, then 30%, because that's what the market actually supports. And then we're back where we started, except now our libraries are fragmented across multiple platforms that are all worse than Steam. This case hinges on Article 102 of the TFEU Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, which the UK still uses for competition law precedents post-Brexit. It deals with abuse of a dominant position. The claim asserts that the platform parity obligations eliminate meaningful price competition. They argue that because Valve says don't undercut us on permanent pricing, the market price is artificially fixed at a high point. But here is the legal flaw. The relevant market definition. They are defining the market as PC gaming distribution. But that's an artificially narrow market definition designed to make Steam look more dominant than it actually is. Steam doesn't just compete with other PC gaming platforms. Steam competes with consoles. If Steam prices get too high, people buy a PS5. If Steam becomes anti-consumer, people subscribe to Game Pass. The market is digital interactive entertainment. And in that market, Valve is just one big player among giants like Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, Tencent, and increasingly mobile gaming platforms. When you properly define the market, Steam's dominance shrinks considerably. Sure, they might have 80% of PC game distribution, but PC gaming is only about 25% of the overall gaming market. Suddenly, that 80% becomes 20% of the total addressable market. And let's talk about the anti-steering provisions. This is the idea that Valve forces you to use their payment processor. Oh no, a store requires you to pay at the register. Can you imagine walking into Tesco, grabbing a loaf of bread, and demanding to pay your friend Dave in the parking lot instead? Security. This is a monopoly. I want to pay Dave. It's ridiculous. It's fiduciary duty 101. Valve processes the payment to handle fraud, taxes, and refunds. If they let you use third-party payment links, the entire ecosystem of trust collapses. Think about what happens when you buy a game on Steam. Valve processes the payment through secure payment gateways. They handle PCI compliance. They manage chargebacks and fraud detection. They collect and remit sales tax to thousands of jurisdictions worldwide. They handle currency conversion for international purchases. They maintain your purchase history. They enable refunds without you having to contact the developer. Now, when you want a refund, you have to email the developer directly and hope they respond. Now, when there's a data breach, there's no large company to hold accountable. The idea is that if you control an essential facility, something that competitors must have access to in order to compete, you have to provide access on reasonable terms. The classic example is railroad networks. If you own the only railroad line to a town, you can't refuse to let competing freight companies use it, because without that access, competition is impossible. But Steam isn't an essential facility. PC gaming existed before Steam. It exists outside of Steam. You can distribute PC games without ever touching Steam. Plenty of developers do it successfully. What Steam provides isn't essential access to customers. It's a convenient, feature-rich way to reach customers. Those are fundamentally different things. Nobody has a legal right to benefit from Steam's infrastructure without following Steam's rules. That's like arguing that you have a right to have Amazon promote your product just because you want to sell online. Sure, you can sell online without Amazon, but if you want to sell through Amazon, you play by Amazon's rules. The lawsuit also tries to invoke margin squeeze theory. The idea that Valve charges developers so much that it squeezes their profit margins to the point where competition becomes impossible. But this fails on multiple levels. First, we've already established that 30% is industry standard. So if this is margin squeeze, every platform is guilty of it. Second, we have abundant evidence that developers are thriving on Steam. Indie games are having a renaissance. Small developers are finding audiences they never could have reached in the pre-digital era. If Steam's fees were truly predatory, we'd see developers fleeing the platform. Instead, we see the opposite. Developers desperately trying to get on Steam because that's where the customers are. Guys, we better act right and fast in any way possible. If you're in the UK, look into your right to opt out of this collective action. Don't let them use your name to dismantle the best platform we've ever had, just so a law firm can buy a bigger yacht. That's all the fun for now. Gotta go. Later.